Representative Willis, do you believe that firearm ownership is a right or a privilege?
I think it is a right with a responsibility behind it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you at least acknowledging that we're dealing with a legitimate constitutional right here, because when we're dealing with constitutional rights, we should avoid at all costs undue burdens on exercising those rights. And I would just like to read really quickly into a record the brief exchange between Senator Harman and then Senator Kwame Raoul from April 10, 2014 in regards to an amendment to the Illinois Constitution prohibiting voter ID laws. Senator Harman, Senator, in a court challenge involving one of these voting laws or procedures, would the law or procedure be subject to strict scrutiny or simply rational basis review? And in response, Senator Raoul, the law and procedure at issue would be subject to strict scrutiny in a court challenge. Representative Willis, this bill requires fingerprints from everyone who applies for a FOID card or a concealed carry. Is that correct?
Yes, it does.
In Illinois, one must have a FOID card to possess a firearm. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Does your bill anticipate that gun owners or prospective gun owners will find a private party vendor, pay them for fingerprints, and then have them submit it to the state police?
That is the intent of the bill. That is the way it is drafted, yes.
In 2014, this body passed House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment number 52 that prevented the enactment of a voter ID law. You voted for that, Representative, and many of the folks in here voted for that. Do you remember that?
I do.
I'd like to read an additional portion of the debate from Senator Raoul, who is obviously now Attorney General Raoul, in 2014. He said, "It should be noted that 11% of U.S. citizens lack a photo ID. Of that, 18% of Americans aged 65 and older do not have a government-issued photo ID, and citizens earning less than $25,000 per year are more than twice as likely to lack a photo ID. And 25% of the voting age African Americans do not have a photo ID." Representative, are you familiar with accurate biometrics?
I am.
Yeah, they're one of the largest fingerprinting vendors in Illinois. They're registered and approved by the state of Illinois. I want to read a couple things from their website on the directions for getting fingerprinted in order to comply with the concealed carry law. It's a two-step process. Number one is print and complete the fingerprint authorization form. And number two, and this is a big one, bring this complete form and a government-issued photo ID to an accurate biometrics fingerprint location. Given these statements, clearly Senator Raoul, now Attorney General Raoul, many of the folks in here, including most likely you, Representative Willis, believe that this was too much of an imposition on the right to vote. It was unduly burdensome to the ability to carry out a legitimate constitutional right. Considering this position, how is it not an inappropriately high imposition for them to have a photo ID in order to get fingerprinted, to get a FOID card for their right to own a firearm?
Well, I'm going to quote from a court decision that says, "For the foregoing reason, we believe the district has adduced substantial evidence from which it reasonably could conclude that fingerprinting and photographing registrants will directly and materially advance public safety by preventing at least some ineligible individuals from obtaining weapons, and more important, by facilitating identification of the owner of a registered firearm during any subsequent encounter with the police. Therefore, these requirements are not unconstitutional. Those requirements are therefore not unconstitutional." I'd also further state that nobody died from voting. that's not necessarily the same from being on the wrong side of a firearm.
Representative, your time has expired, but Representative Spain, do you wish to yield your time?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to yield my time to Representative Wilhour.
5 more minutes.
Thank you. I'll just go to the bill. Clearly, there's a double standard here. We can't pick and choose which part of the Constitution we uphold. Guns are they're part of American culture. The right to bear arms is a fundamental constitutional right. Laws like these laws, they're counterproductive. They don't take guns out of the hands of criminals. Criminals, by the very nature, they don't respect laws. They don't value laws. What we should be talking about in this assembly is why people are committing these acts in higher numbers than ever before. Americans have always had access to firearms, but it's only in the last couple decades that this has really become an epidemic. This is a mental health issue. A segment of our society is, they're sick. But why aren't we asking why? Why aren't we dealing with that? Is it because as a society that we've devalued life in our culture? Is it because we allow and promote our kids sitting in front of these video games where they're encouraged to blow each other's heads off? I don't know. I don't think that you do either. But do we care? Why aren't we focusing on that? Maybe we should focus on how we keep people safe in gun-free zones, because that's where most of the crimes are committed. This bill does very little of either of that. What it does do is it makes it more onerous, more burdensome for law-abiding citizens to exercise a legitimate constitutional right. I'd ask this body to stop the political opportunism, deal with real issues. We are not dealing with the real issues here. It will not take the guns out of the hands of criminals, and I ask us to respect the Constitution and vote no on this blatant government overreach.